either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast MicroViews. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And we are continuing Chris's choice for bad movies with her choice for MicroView this season. And we thought we had covered this one, but we talked about it, a bit of detail when we did our gritty fairy tale movies 6 years ago now.
A little bit. It's been a while. It's been a tiny bit of time.
Yeah, so we are doing the diabetes or magically diabetes inducing Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunter.
A fantastic movie.
Yep.
It is bad. It's bad, but it's so much fun. This is technically a horror film.
No.
Which I forget regularly because this is R-rated.
Oh, it is. God damn it.
And I forget that every single time I put it in my DVD player to watch it. And I watch this movie regularly. This is one that we now both own. And
unfortunately.
And I do watch this one regularly. This is in the same spirit as The Brothers Grimm from 2005.
Except more fairy tale bullshit than you can think of. I have a lot of questions after going back through this one.
So I had to do some double checking because there was a slew of Hansel and Gretel themed movies that happened all kind of around the same time. And I never was sure where they came from. I'm pretty sure they came from this movie. I think this was the epicenter of Hansel and Gretel bullshit themed movies.
See, I haven't gone through Brothers Grimm adaptation, so I'm currently reading the Brothers Grimm.
Now Brothers Grimm adaptations is, unfortunately, a different class.
Okay.
Because when I say Hansel and Gretel adaptations, I mean there was like 5 to 7 movies that were directly Hansel and Gretel that came out about 5 years apart from each other, and several TV shows that were somewhat Brothers Grimm-esque themed also had specifically Hansel and Gretel themed episodes that happened not too long after this movie came out. Why? I really don't know, because this movie did not do well as far as critics were concerned. It made money, don't get me wrong there. This movie made a lot of money. But not enough for how many Hansel and Gretel themed movies there are.
Yeah, just Googling it. The only one that I'm roughly familiar with is roughly Hansel and Gretel Get Baked, as well as there's a Korean adaptation called Hansel and Gretel.
Yes, there is.
But yeah, just looking it up, there's Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Yes.
Which is
different.
A mockbuster.
Yeah, it's technically different.
Hansel and Gretel Warriors of Witchcraft. Hansel and Gretel, an opera fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also Witch Slayer Gretel, which is also not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Hansel versus Gretel.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, no, there was like a surprising influx of this as a genre, like this very niche topic of Hansel and Gretel being a gritty, almost horror-based thing, sometimes a funny thing. Well, for some reason, why? Why this movie to set off that train? I don't know.
Well, so from where I've gotten in the Brothers Grimm so far, because I didn't realize how many there are.
Oh, there's a lot, yeah.
Like, of the ones, it's the one that's been least Disney-fied, I think, of, like, their fairy tales, because, like, you got Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, like, all of Snow White, all of those have been Disney-fied, whereas they haven't really touched Hansel and Gretel because of, like, those big ones that everyone knows. This one is the more horror-based because of the witch trying to eat people. Although, granted, original stories get way darker. This is the one I think is a little harder to not make dark.
Very true. No, I completely agree. Part of the, normalification, I think, of Grimm tales is how much can you turn them into something sweet and nice that does not have people chopping foots off or decapitating people or eating people. And yeah, this story in general is difficult to do that too.
Well, I think part of this one, and this tale specifically, is it's not so much an adaptation, it's inspired by the tales of Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, but it's written and directed by Tommy Wirkola, so he's able to twist the basic idea of that into something different.
And he is good at this kind of movie, these action fantasy / horror-ish movies.
Yeah.
He's done several of them. This was not his first by a long shot. Dead Snow was what he was known for before this movie. So, this was the perfect director/writer for this.
Yeah.
And then you have two, at the time, very big names, very recognizable faces in a honestly rather B-ish movie.
Yeah, it's starring Hawkeye as Hansel.
I love that we all agree that he's just Hawkeye now.
Gemma Addison as Gretel and Famke Janison as Muriel.
Yeah. So, like, these are faces that people recognized, even if we all just called them Hawkeye and whatever else role you remembered them from. But, like, we knew these faces. We knew who these people were. And this movie was seemingly just a summer blockbuster funsy time.
Yeah, well, and it does start off... That's the thing, too, is it does start off strong. I mean, the house looks gross. It's creepy inside. I mean,
this movie looks good.
It promises that grit and violence that got us into gritty fairy tale movies back in the day.
Oh, for sure.
But... rewatching it, like, there are
there's a lot
of questions. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the credits are pretty cool.
They look good. I love a fun credit.
Although I will say, okay, first off,
yeah,
they actually do use the old English S that looks like an F.
It is cool. It is fun.
But this is where a lot of my questions begin.
Okay.
Why is I think I can answer one of these, is that everything is in English.
Yes.
Even
not
though,
German.
Yeah, exactly.
Not German, but okay, so here's the thing. We have just talked about a whole bunch of, like, other movies that are good but don't have a whole lot of substance to them or like backstory to them. This movie, Tommy has talked at length about the process of him writing and directing this film, like, a lot. And so we have answers for you. This is a, and I quote, slightly steampunk adjacent movie in his mind. I know it's not really. He wanted a very high fantasy. He wanted the feeling and grittiness of Germany without having to deal with actual Germany.
Okay, so okay.
He wanted it in English. I think this was maybe one of his first fully English big films. He had done a lot of other work where it wasn't all in English. So, like, maybe that contributed to some of the silliness, too.
Oh, okay, I don't know 100% there, because, like, okay, so the one thing with the articles, one, I do like that it's kind of a nice little nod to get Joe up to history through the credits.
Yes, it's nice. It looks good.
The spelling's done in Old English if you're really paying attention to it.
Very fun.
Hell, even getting the old missing child on the milk bottle is kind of a nice touch.
It's a little funny, yeah.
But you said he wanted to do it but get out of Germany. It's set in Augsburg, where my Oma's from. It's set in Germany.
No. He wanted it set in Germany, but fantasy Germany, where he didn't have to deal with it being in German.
Okay. Well, yeah, I get that to a point, but I still also have questions of, like, do it steampunk, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to be set in a world of, like, this is the legend of Hansel and Gretel, like, after the fact. Or, like, the legend that they're based off of.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, the tech is cool.
I love it. It's so much fun.
I have a lot of questions, though, because Hansel and Gretel was published way before this. I mean, the magical record player not till 1877. The Gatling gun 1862, syringes 1844.
Again, all of this summed up by the fact that he wanted steampunk-esque items without the steampunk aesthetic.
That's the thing is, like, okay, it sounds plausible for after the original story was published, but I wish they'd leaned into even, like, older technology just a little bit more, but, like, twisted it. Like, instead of, like, okay, well, we have a record player, do a wax wheel. Like, do something that seems a little bit more interesting from that time frame, instead of just, like, it's a record player with a little bit more instrument or ornamentation to it.
I agree with you, that would have been cool. However, I would like to point out that while this movie might have spurred the other movies that were specifically Hansel and Gretel themed, this was by no means one of the earlier grim grucification and updated / steampunkified stories. In fact, there was a whole genre. This was really actually on, like, the dying end of that, like, big wave that we had.
Yeah, I mean, we had Van Helsing, 2007?
Yeah, and Brothers Grimm was a 2005 film. There was a pretty big wave, and I know there was a bunch of horror ones, like true horror ones, that also filled in the gaps there too.
Yeah, Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, like we had several that, like, expanded, like, okay, a little bit more realistic old school, and then some very, like, what is tech? Don't worry about it. How does this work? Don't think about it. And this movie was at the tail end of that. And listening to him talk about his thought process and what he was wanting out of this movie, it is very clear that he really only had one goal in mind, and it was to have a fun movie. Yeah. And I would argue that he did do that.
To a point.
He wanted something that felt high action, thus all of the chase scenes, thus all of the woods.
The crouching tiger, hidden dragon style rope or wire play and whatnot.
Yeah, and he took a lot of inspiration from other blockbusters. Granted, this came out in like January, which kind of fits. It has kind of wintry-esque vibes with all the dead trees and stuff.
Yeah.
But he wanted big blockbuster feel to it, which is why we also have some really interesting, like, booby traps, why we have weird and fun gadgets.
Well, so that's one thing I think about the technology is it doesn't feel very established. It feels convenient at times instead of like playing up and like building up why they have this type of weaponry. They just happen to have it. Like
yes.
for example,
that is the reason.
The crossbow. I have a lot of questions about the crossbow because there's multiple times where she shoots it, regular arrows, and then the next shot is like attached to a rope, a line of some kind.
Yes.
And then, like, cool that it does this.
Yeah.
But when it splits and shoots in two different directions...
Not physically possible.
Cool as shit, though. But it's just a convenient thing to just kind of, like, throw in there instead of, like, using it a couple times or, like, kind of forgetting about it. Like the magical diabetes.
The magical diabetes is hilarious to me, I'm not gonna lie.
Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I have... Rewatching this. I've watched this movie, like, 3 or 4 times at this point.
I think I've watched this movie, like, 20 times.
Here's the reason the diabetes is so dumb for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is because it is so inconsistent.
Yes.
He says, like, oh, I have to take this every few hours or I die. One,
yeah.
How did they figure out how to fix this before he died without taking the medicine? Because he's like, oh, I have to do this every couple hours.
No idea.
2, the movie is so loose in how often he has to take it.
Yeah.
It hints that he has to do it every 4 hours, but he's knocked out multiple times where he doesn't take his medicine, and the only time it comes back into play, we get the one shot before bed, and then it only comes back when he's choking out the witch at the end, and then the diabetes hits in. It's like...
Yeah, okay, so there's a list of movies that reference diabetes on the internet for, I don't know, for fun or for if you are really interested in that topic, I guess. And this movie is regularly listed as like a really terrible reference, but is on the list and thus gets a brownie point for even being on the list. And okay, here's my thing. Especially having listened to all of these interviews for what is really not meant to be a very big research project, he didn't take this as a big research project either. You could tell that during the writing of this, he threw out a ton of ideas as far as like weaponry, the witches in general, especially having a bunch of them from all over the world, or supposedly all over the world with the different stylings and the different costuming. And then the diabetes as well was clearly just like a, hey, these kids ate like a shit ton of magic sugar. What happens when you eat shit tons of magic sugar? I guess diabetes. Well, and like
okay.
like and like you can tell that was the entirety of the thought process, and it just like ends there. And honestly, I think it's that the unknowns. I think it's the questions and lack of extra effort put in that makes this movie like rewatchable, honestly.
Well, because it makes no sense, because
you keep rewatching it hoping that there's an answer.
Yeah, Gretel also had the candy. He obviously didn't eat enough because he's not chubby as shit when they free him.
I don't know, man.
I think he's faking it to sound cool in front of the red-haired chick.
Oh, yeah, the witch he tries to bang, yeah.
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 Well, it doesn't try. Bangs.
Well, and then she dies. But
yeah. Still got laid.
Yeah. So there are no answers to this movie, much like the rest of this entire genre, not just Hansel and Gretel movies, but just like dark horror, action, adventure, fairy, fantasy movies in general. Most of this genre has so many plot hole points that just don't make any damn sense. There's so many questions, and most of us agree that these problems could be solved with a sequel or a book or a comic strip or something.
Or lean into the writing style or the time period just a little bit more, because there's parts where like once they've rescued the red hair witch, one, I do like that they're explaining to the audience that's about to try and hang her of like, here's what you need to look for to find a witch. She doesn't have any of these. It's like that's a solid way of writing. But in that same scene, he refers to everyone around them as hillbillies, which that's where it starts really falling off, because I'm like, that doesn't seem accurate. And I went into a rabbit hole, and it's a strongly American word.
It's an almost exclusively American word.
Started post-American Civil War and wasn't stereotyped until the late 19th and early 20th century. So it's like it's
Yeah, no, and it's like, it's so specifically American stereotype / insult word that, like, there are arguments on what qualifies as hillbilly.
I
and
know.
unfortunately, these people no way qualify.
I've said hillbilly to people around here, and they're like, what do you mean by hillbilly? It's
There are some who take it as a very big insult.
I know.
Yes.
And I do
And
get
then there
it.
are some of us who wear the badge with great honor. But again, it is a term and an insult that, like, also is a very specific term and insult that, like, does not apply to a lot of people who might, like, just throw it around. The usage is wrong in this movie. But again, just like the rest of this entire, like, style of movie, everything that is themed around this genre has so many damn plot holes, which are fine, but could be fixed with a sequel, and we never get a sequel.
That's it. I think it could have been fixed with, like, more leaning into the style. I mean, look at Van Helsing. Van Helsing feels more believable than this. Of like,
but also needs a sequel. It has giant plot hole points.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Is like, that's what I'm saying about leaning into what you're trying to go for instead of kind of banding it partway through, just to, like, make something that could have been more interesting into something a little just kind of a little generic at times too. Because, like, don't get me wrong, there's some cool stuff. Like, I like that the evil witch's magic causes them to rot within. That way the cool. Good witches can hide among the common folk. Mm-hmm. And also their hair turning to horns is pretty dope. Their brooms doubling as weapons.
Very cool.
Like, they did a lot of interesting things that...
Yes, there's a lot of good details.
But they don't lean into it, too. Like, because...
True.
And they add so much to it, too. Like, with the... setting up the sequel, I think it had potential.
It did.
But, like, they do this thing with the troll. And granted, I appreciate that they do practical effects.
Yeah, it looks cool.
But they kind of made it, like, a little bit too King Kong-y for...
He has loose and not very rigid terms to his use and power.
Yeah.
But, like, again, I strongly feel that, like, so many of these things could have been better with, like... Okay, an example being the first Hellboy, which is almost in the same genre. It's very close to being in the same genre. And it also had a lot of plot hole points and problems with small details, or I shouldn't even say small, rather large details, and those were fixed over comic books and sequential movies and TV shows. None of these ever get that. Well, they get talked about, but never happen.
I think what it is, I mean, usually we're fine with, like, a soft magic system, like in Harry Potter or something where it's like...
nothing makes sense. It all is just kind of wishy-washy.
The spell's convenient, but there's some rules and stuff. This movie doesn't really set up any type of rules of, like, how are they getting these supplied? Like, it doesn't really set up anything that makes it feel grounded. It's just like, okay, they're transient. This is just another one of their cases, without giving them much of an establishment outside of, okay, the opening credits where we see... They've taken down 5 or 6 witches.
Sure.
And they've got a fan club.
There could be so much more in general. I fully agree. I have been on the long waiting list for hopefully a second, because critics hated this movie.
Oh yeah.
It received terrible scores right from the get-go, but it made its money back very quickly. Opening weekend, it made all of its money back and then some, and then by the time they were done counting in box office, this movie made so much damn money that it was clear that this style of movie was a success, which I do think is part of the reason why we had this second wave of, like, bullshit Hansel and Gretel themed movies.
Yeah.
But then there was talks of a sequel, there was talks of a TV show, there was introducing the idea, and nothing ever happened. Well, and that's kind of the same thing with every one of these. The most we ever get is, like, a very half-assed TV show that honestly isn't really what people want, because they're always TV or cop drama styled shows.
Well, I think part of it too is they kind of wrote themselves into a corner of, like, they revealed everything about Hansel and Gretel. Spoilers, their mom was a good witch. They were the children of a good witch, and they weren't supposed to ever basically exist, and, like,
they're immune to the magic of all the evil. They definitely would have had to do a lot of rewriting to have the story continue.
Yeah, because what are they going to do next? Hunt another witch that's stealing children? Like, it doesn't...
I mean, yeah, probably.
I mean, they potentially set it up for other creatures and stuff, but it just doesn't... I don't think it would have been as successful or as loosely interesting as this one. And I think
probably not.
For me, it comes down to the writing, is that it just never got into everything. Hawkeye's humor for me just gets really annoying early on, because it's like, okay, he's always doing these like one little quips.
It's a lot of one-liners, and honestly, a lot of Jeremy Renner's character from this is directly influenced from his action hero phase, and like the director talks about how like he loved watching the action movies, and that's why a lot of the scenes and stunts are shot the way they are, is because he liked the extra action and he wanted extra action in his fantasy horror. And unfortunately, that does mean that Jeremy Renner is just playing a medieval version of Hawkeye again.
Well, no, he's not playing a medieval version of Hawkeye. He has a gun.
He does have a gun.
Yeah.
And his sister has a bow. Kind of. Crossbow.
I mean, close enough.
Close enough. But yeah, no, like, it does mean that, unfortunately, especially with how close this was to, like, people recognizing him for his action roles and his hero roles, most of us were just like, oh yeah, this is a silly B rewriting of his already famous character.
Yeah, and as dumb as it is, I still kind of want more. I mean,
that's the thing about this genre, is it always leaves you wanting more, even if you will never get it.
But the other thing like that I think they could have done is like lean into like magically infused instruments, or like
that
something.
Cool.
Give them a network of support system or a little something, because like that again, it goes back to the soft gadgets. I think that's my biggest hiccup, is the gadgets, is because like they just happen to show up of like, oh, we have the record player that sounds super realistic that we just pulled out of our ass. We came into town, we've got a gun, we've got a crossbow, and we don't have any backpacks. Like, it's like, you guys don't have anything that like, again, it's grounding the movie into a believable world instead of just that's something I've been trying to struggle with, like trying to understand specifically Japanese movies, where they create these like micro worlds that, while dumb, exist within their space. They fully go into the style they're trying to go for.
Sure.
Whereas this,
it's not an American fantasy movie style.
Yeah.
Everything is usually very loosey goosey. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, because it tries to cross its T's and dots its I's, and I think that's maybe that's the issue, is that it wants to cross the T's and dot the I's, but it doesn't have the time or the network to establish that or get it fully put together, other than the Coven of Witches coming together, which, cool as shit, too.
It looked good. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, is part of the reason this movie does stand out is it is a funny movie. It is fun, but it did look good. And for a very low budget action horror-ish movie, like, looking good is honestly over half the battle. And unfortunately, that means that most of your budget is blown on looking decent as opposed to like making sense or world building.
Yeah, well, not even that, because like we'll get into later choices.
Sure.
But like there's a couple movies we have planned down the line where the effects aren't great, but it doesn't matter because you're invested in what's going to happen next in this world. Like, once this movie gets to a certain point, once like they're getting knocked out, they're getting separated, it doesn't really keep building them at all. It's just kind of like, okay, here's their entire progression. He gets slayed.
Absolutely.
They find out their backstory. Big whoop-de-doo. It just explains why the witches don't hurt them. It feels like a stupid way to explain their powers, instead of saving that for some mystery down the line.
Sure.
Of like,
oh no, for sure. And that is the curse of this type of movie, is unfortunately there's not a lot of good ones in this genre. Yeah. This is not a good one. I didn't pick this because it was good.
No, I know.
I picked it because, honestly, despite this movie being honestly really bad, there's a lot of things wrong with it. It's terribly rewatchable. Upsettingly rewatchable. I'm not the only one of our friend group who has this on DVD, and we rewatch this regularly. If we don't know what else to put on, this is always on the table, along with shitty shark movies. And I think it's kind of in that same feeling of shitty shark movies, where, like, yes, we know they're bad, we know what's gonna happen, and it's not gonna be pretty the entire way through, but it's really satisfying to watch, and it's always a good time. And this one is one of the easier ones to watch. I mentioned this is an R movie. It doesn't feel like it at all. There's, like, it's R for a couple of curse words and a few titties, and that's really it.
Yeah.
So, like, it's terribly easy to put on and not really care about, like, who might be with us, or, like, who in the friend group normally wouldn't watch an R film, because this is barely an R movie. Yeah,
honestly, well, granted, I might be skewed a little bit on this. I think you could have a kid watch this movie. And
I kind of agree with you, and I know I try and be very cautious because I know different people, different rules, right? But, like, honestly, like, with the exception of one scene that would be skippable, and maybe don't watch the extended scenes, those are I shouldn't say extended, the deleted scenes from the DVD, those are the ones that are truly somewhat more graphic. But again, they're the extended ones, you have to specifically select them. The most of this movie is bad guts and blood. It's not even, like, very detailed. There's just, like, occasionally squirts of, like, oh, they ran into a wire, Tom and Jerry style.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a tame R movie that, like, we really, especially for the adults in our friend group, we don't have to worry. It's an easy one to watch, and even if people are like, oh, I don't normally watch this sort of stuff, they kind of get sucked into it.
Yeah, and the kids are young enough to not know a bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Chris, rent by streamer declined that we ever watched Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunter despite having an audio recording of us watching it.
Like, I know I own this movie, and I bought it when I originally watched it in theaters. When it came out on DVD, it was on my list. I don't recommend you buy it. If it's streaming, this is a great one to throw on. But unless you're like me and this is your genre, this movie's totally just not worth the money to pay for.
Yeah, I say stream it. Free stream it. Don't rent it at all. Again, it just goes back to, it doesn't really lean into it as much as, or lean into the time period that it was going for. Even with steampunk, like we've talked about Wild Wild West. Again, the only really steampunky bits are the gun, the microphone, or the syringes, and the record player. Like, that's... Yeah,
it's very lightly futuristic.
Yeah, if you're going for that style,
go for it. Lean into it.
Make one of them really gadgety. That's his strength, is he's the gadget guy, and Gretel's the
kick-ass or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like maybe that's where we were heading and we never got there.
Exactly. Like I said, doesn't fully lean into the style I think it was trying to go for.
I agree, which is sad because I love this movie. Do I recommend you watch it? Absolutely. But don't pay for it.
It's worth a watch.
Oh, for sure. You'll enjoy it. You'll watch the whole thing and then you'll wonder why you did.
Yep. So, but that's where we're ending with Chris's bad choices, and we are entering my realm of tasty weirdness back into the slurpable world of ramen westerns.
Yeah, back into the trenches we go.
Not into the trenches. I actually chose something really good. It's on the Criterion channel.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Don't judge me.
Always.
But, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace!